Connor Bedard finally snaps his 8-game goal drought, and Colin Blackwell records his first NHL hat trick to help the Blackhawks beat the Coyotes for the second time in 6 days. All that and plenty more right here on Locked On Blackhawks.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome on into another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, thank you all for making the show your very first listen here to start off your week. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can go and give me a follow on X at Jack Bushman2, and make sure to also go and follow my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And just a quick reminder, if you happen to be watching this on YouTube right now, make sure to go and smash that like button, comment down below, and subscribe to the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel. It is my birthday after all, and all I want for my birthday is for all of you who aren't already subscribed to the channel to go and do so real quick. It's 100% free and won't cost you anything. Really does help me out tremendously. And also, today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks, I got to let you know, is brought to you by Game Time. Make sure to go and download the Game Time app right now. And when you do, use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps to get $20 off to sporting events, concerts, or theater events near you. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. A pair of games over the weekend for the Blackhawks with a nice little back-to-back on Saturday and Sunday, starting on Saturday afternoon with a meeting with the Washington Capitals out in the nation's capital, trying to extend their road winning streak to a whopping 2 games. But it became apparent very early that that wasn't going to be the case, as the Blackhawks quickly fell behind 3-0 in the opening 20 minutes, despite actually not having an awful first period like the score would suggest. They had some pretty decent zone time and actually registered 12 shots on goal, but it just kind of became apparent early that it wasn't going to be their night. Down 3-0 after the first period, the Capitals would go on to make it 4-0 in the second. The Hawks did get on the board with 10 minutes to go in the third. A nice redirect by Tyler Johnson, but it was far too little, far too late at that point. And really, the Blackhawks just got Charlie Lindgren in this one, as he stopped 31 of the 32 shots that he faced to lead the Capitals to a 4-1 victory over the Blackhawks, despite Chicago outshooting the Caps 32-26 in that one. I like to see their shot first mentality, even though they didn't get the results. However, on Sunday, they had a nice little opportunity to bounce back as they started a 4-game homestand against the Arizona Coyotes, the team that they just defeated last Tuesday 5-2 in order to snap their 22-game losing drought on the road. And Capitals have been playing some pretty awful hockey of their own over the last few weeks. So it seemed like a nice little get-right spot for the Blackhawks on home ice, but they fell behind 2-0 pretty early in this one, down 1-0 after the first period, and then the Coyotes, go and strike 11 seconds into the second period. Clayton Keller with his second of the game, just streaking down center ice, a really bad look for the Blackhawks coming out of the intermission. And it was like, oh boy, are we really about to go and do this to the Arizona Coyotes on home ice? Are we really about to do this again to all these fine people who came down to the United Center and are in attendance like they did the weekend prior against the Columbus Blue Jackets? But just in the nick of time, the Blackhawks managed to get things together, responded really nicely, and actually had one of their better performances of the entire season the rest of the way. And at the helm of this comeback, of course, was none other than 18-year-old Connor Bedard. Bedard leads an offensive explosion of a comeback in the middle frame. It starts off with a nice little greasy goal as he was just trying to center a feed from behind the goal line. It ends up bouncing in off of the Coyotes defender J.J. Moser for Bedard's 18th goal of the season. That snaps his 8-game goal drought. And going back to Saturday's game against the Capitals, even though the Blackhawks only wound up scoring one goal in that game, Connor Bedard, you could tell, was a man on a mission to try to get his team back into it. He had a whopping 15 shot attempts in this game. 6 of them wound up on net. He didn't find the back of the net, but you could tell he was really trying to get over this goal drought, and it seemed like the frustrations were really starting to boil over for him since he hadn't found the back of the net in quite a long time, but had to feel good to get a little bit of a greasy one to kick things off for the Blackhawks and get them on the board in this game against the Coyotes. And then he wasn't satisfied after just getting one. Just a few moments later, a nasty curl and drag maneuver from Bedard on the Blackhawks 5-on-3. One of those highlight reel goals that you're going to be seeing for a long, long time, and a glimpse at just what makes him so special. That curl and drag release. It's honestly a goal that not many players in the NHL could score right here, right now. A beautiful goal followed by a beautiful celly for Mr. Connor Bedard. His 19th goal of the season, second goal of the game, gives him the team lead in goals once again. Take that, Jason Dickinson. And oh yeah, he wasn't done. Later on, another Blackhawks power play. Arizona really has to stay out of box whenever they play the Blackhawks. Bedard with a nice cross ice feed to set up Tyler Johnson for a one-timer. His 14th goal of the season puts the Blackhawks ahead 4-3 late in the second period. An absolutely monstrous middle frame out of Connor Bedard. 2 goals and a primary assist in like a 12-minute stretch. One of those periods where you remind yourself, yeah, I'm very glad this guy is on our side and is going to be that way for a long, long time. But not only was Connor Bedard having himself quite a night, Blackhawks fans, so was Colin Blackwell, who, of course, was on the cusp of getting traded leading up to Friday's trade deadline. Kyle Davidson elects to keep him, and what a performance he would go on to have to help the Blackhawks and Bedard come back in this game. In the midst of Bedard's 2 goals in the second period, Colin Blackwell jumped on an Alex Vlasic rebound for his 6th goal of the season, and then early on in the third, a huge insurance goal, again being in the right place at the right time, driving the front of the net with a purpose. And shout out to the Blackhawks for, again, having that shoot first mentality that's eluded them far too many times this season. I really do believe they've been doing a better job at that over the last couple of weeks. Haven't really been getting the results. Like I said, that's kind of what happened on Saturday against the Capitals. They certainly got them in this one against the Coyotes. Blackwell crashes the net once again and jumps on a Seth Jones rebound for his 7th goal of the season and 2nd of the game. And then for good measure, Blackwell is the one to get the empty netter for his first NHL hat trick to seal the deal. The Blackhawks storm all the way back from an early 2-0 deficit and rally to beat the Coyotes 7-4. One of their better team performances of the entire season. A lot of guys contributing in a lot of different ways. But I think Blackwell, even though Bedard, always takes the limelight, I think Blackwell is the one who deservingly gets the number 1 star in this game. And I thought it was really cool to hear him speak with the United Center crowd after being the first star of the game, and also talking with NBC Sports Chicago and talking with the Blackhawks media, just saying how he's so grateful for this opportunity here in Chicago. He really didn't want to get traded, and it was an unsettling couple of days for him. He spoke with general manager Kyle Davidson and talked about how, he really enjoys his role here in Chicago. He really enjoys what he does. He enjoys going to war and being in the locker room with all of these guys. And after the injury scare that he had, being away from the game for 11 months and what was originally an injury that had a 12-week timeline, he's just not taking anything for granted and is really, really happy with what he's doing right here, right now in Chicago. And I got to say, even though the results offensively and points-wise maybe haven't been there for Blackwell over the last month or so, his energy has been there night in and night out. And on that second line with Jason Dickinson and Joey Anderson, that's been the shutdown trio for head coach Luke Richardson all season long. They've been fantastic at their job. And look, you can dispute the Blackhawks' performances and their effort level on a nightly basis. Colin Blackwell is the type of guy you can never question his effort. He brings it night in and night out. And as I mentioned on Friday's show, after Blackwell and Tyler Johnson wound up not getting traded, I wouldn't be so surprised to see Colin Blackwell get a 1 or 2 year extension here in Chicago, just because of how well he's done in his role, what he means to this locker room, and what he brings on a night-to-night basis. I just think he brings the right type of style and game that Kyle Davidson will appreciate, and I know all those guys in that locker room and on that coaching staff certainly appreciate it as well. So good to see Colin Blackwell have himself a heck of a night after not getting traded by the Blackhawks and having probably a very stressful week last week leading up to the deadline. He tallies his first NHL hat trick along with Bedard's 3-point game to lead the Blackhawks over the Arizona Coyotes. But a lot of guys and a lot of things that I want to shout out here before moving on, because like I said, we just don't get team performances like this from the Blackhawks all that often, and we got to relish them when we do, because it has been a grueling regular season thus far. But the Blackhawks led the Arizona Coyotes 58-48 in shot attempts in this game. You don't see them on the right end of that outcome very often. They also led the Coyotes 28-24 in scoring chances and 11-7 in high danger chances. So good to see, them having all 4 forward lines and all 3 defensive pairings rolling really well in this game to accomplish those numbers. And also shout out the power play. It's looked much better over the last couple of weeks. I think that goes hand in hand with the shoot first mentality that they've gotten better at as well. They had 2 power play goals in this one from Bedard, the other coming from Tyler Johnson. That now gives them 6 power play goals in their last 2 meetings against the Arizona Coyotes. And as Seth Jones said, wish we got to play them a little bit more. If only there were 30 other Arizona Coyotes in the NHL. Also got to give a shout out to the penalty kill. That went 2 for 2 on the night. A perfect night out of the special teams. And Seth Jones, as I just mentioned, he had himself a heck of a game too, kind of watered down a little bit by Bedard and Blackwell's performances, but he had 4 assists, and it was actually his first 4-assist game of his NHL career. So shout out to Seth for having the dishes going all night long on the back end. I also need to give some credit to Ryan Donato. Before Bedard got on the board and the Blackhawks were down 2-0, he had a huge hit just seconds before that first Bedard tally that it felt like really got the Blackhawks going and got the crowd back into it. And he actually scored a beautiful insurance goal there in the third period that went on to be the game winner. So shout out to Ryan Donato for, along with Colin Blackwell, bringing the energy in this game. Got to give a shout out to Arvid Soderblom as well. It wasn't a perfect performance out of him in net. He allowed 4 goals, but he stopped 32 of the 36 shots that he faced, made enough big saves in the third period to get the job done. It's his 4th win of the season and the first time in the NHL that he's picked up back-to-back victories. So hopefully he can carry that momentum over into the end of the year and then go and have himself a good offseason. Tyler Johnson tallied his 14th goal of the year, his 6th power play goal, which ties Nick Foligno for the new team lead. Alex Vlasic had a really good showing on the back end, I thought, an assist, 3 shots on goal, a couple of beautiful stretch passes, which is really becoming a solid part of his game. He was also +2 and had a fight in 18 minutes and 27 seconds of time on ice. And even Jared Tenorti and Jacob Megna had a good game as well, as they led the Blackhawks and expected goals for at 5-on-5. A really solid showing from basically everybody in the Blackhawks lineup. Nice to see the Hawks get one of these wins on home ice in front of their own fans after a pretty grueling stretch at home in the month of February. Nice to see the Blackhawks go and get this one. And like Seth Jones said, I wish this Blackhawks team got to play the Arizona Coyotes a little bit more frequently. All right, there's my thoughts on the Blackhawks. Big win over the Arizona Coyotes last night. Coming up in just a moment, though, I will get into some more exciting news as Landon Slaggert from Notre Dame has officially signed his entry-level contract with Chicago. But first, I got to talk to you all about Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event, and Game Time is the fastest and easiest way for you to buy all of your tickets, whether you're going to a sporting event, a concert, a theater event, a comedy show, or more. And I personally have used Game Time since I was back in high school going down to the United Center to watch Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews, along with all of those Blackhawks greats during the Dynasty era in the mid-2000s. And I still use Game Time to this day to go and see Connor Bedard play at the UC, or if I'm wanting to go to Wrigley Field during the summer and catch a baseball game, or if I'm traveling in another city, wanting to go see a comedy show with one of my friends, wanting to go see a concert or whatnot, I always make sure to check Game Time because it's the fastest way for you to get your tickets. It's the easiest way for you to get the tickets, and it's also the cheapest. Plus, I love how they offer and show you pictures from every seat in the house so you know exactly what to get before you arrive or even before you purchase the tickets. I highly recommend you all go and download the Game Time app right now, and when you do, create an account and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps for $20 off with your first purchase. Yes, you heard me right. You can get $20 off to come and see Connor Bedard play at the United Center before the end of the season. All you have to do is download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Game Time. Segment 2, I talked about this on Friday, Blackhawks fans, because I knew it would be quickly becoming a possibility, but after Frank Nazar and the Michigan Wolverines knocked off the Notre Dame Fighting Irish in the first round of the Big Ten tournament, by the way, a very intriguing second round matchup as Nazar and Michigan will be taking on Oliver Moore, Sam Rinzel in the Minnesota Golden Gophers in the next round. Make sure to be keeping an eye out for that one. Two really good teams there in the Big Ten that are having their sights set on a national championship this season. But after Michigan knocked off Notre Dame 2-0 in the best of 3 series this weekend, Landon Slaggert, third round pick for the Blackhawks way back in 2020, the 79th overall selection, actually went 2 picks ahead of Blackhawks defenseman prospect Wyatt Kaiser. He has now officially signed his entry-level contract with the Blackhawks. Happened rather quickly on Sunday morning, which suggests only good things. And I talked about how there had been a little bit of hiccups in the past year or so about Slaggert signing his entry-level deal. The Blackhawks wanted him to sign that last summer after the completion of his junior season, but Slaggert felt like he had some unfinished business at Notre Dame, wanted to go back for his senior season. His little brother Carter was also on the team as well, and it's kind of been a family thing there at Notre Dame. Landon's older brother Graham was a former 4-year player for the Fighting Irish as well. So even though the Blackhawks wanted him to go pro, Slaggert ultimately turned down that offer to go back to Notre Dame for his senior season. But I mentioned this on Friday. It did feel like there weren't any complications between the two sides, and it seemed like they were both in agreement that an entry-level deal was going to be the next step whenever the season was going to come to a close. And clearly, by the timing of this coming Sunday morning, the day after Slaggert had his season come to an end, suggests that they've been in communication for a long, long time about this process, which is good things. And yeah, now Slaggert is officially signed and going to be joining with the Blackhawks after inking a 2-year entry level deal at $9,000. $1,200 and $500, but it is only through the 2024-2025 season. I should point out it's a 2-year entry-level deal rather than a 3-year contract that Slaggert is signing because of his age. He's going to be turning 22 this summer, so ultimately it can only be a 2-year deal, and it's actually almost like a 1.2-year deal for Slaggert because he is going to be a restricted free agent next summer, in the summer of 2025. So kind of a quick turnaround there, but maybe something that the Blackhawks don't necessarily hate with how they're trying to want to map things out long term. But yeah, Slaggert, super excited to finally see him arrive onto the professional scene. I've been watching him play for Notre Dame over the last 4 years, and it's been quite a journey for him to get up to this point. He started off as a freshman coming from the United States Development Program following being picked by the Blackhawks in the 3rd round, and really made an impact right away as an 18-year-old. In 25 games as a freshman, Slaggert tallied 8 goals and 14 assists for 22 points. And you were like, wow, almost a point per game guy in his freshman year. That is rather impressive. And, maybe didn't have the sophomore season that he wanted following those numbers being put up, but still a rather productive player. You saw his goals bounce up from 8 to 12, still only had 14 assists though for 26 points in 40 games. But the real concerns came during his junior campaign, in which he played in 35 games, but had a career low 7 goals along with a career low 6 assists for only 13 points. And you had to be a little bit concerned with the lack of production there out of Slags after being a good player during his underclassmen years. And just for whatever reason, things weren't going his way. I think the Blackhawks were a little bit worried that after those struggles, that if he stayed in college, there was the potential for the numbers to dip once again, and they would have liked to have him under their control down in Rockford, developing under their eye and whatnot. But thankfully, Slaggert returned to Notre Dame and picked it up right away. It was really clear early on in the season that he was going to have a big-time type of campaign. In 36 games, he winds up with 20 goals and 11 assists for 31 points, had a goal in each of his final 2 collegiate games over the weekend against Frank Nazar in Michigan. And based on what he's done this senior season and the types of progression he's shown, I am excited for his future at the NHL level. I've always had him in my mid-teens sort of for my Blackhawks prospect rankings, but he's got some good characteristics and some good attributes that I do think are going to translate well at the NHL level. He's a 6'4", 190-pound left-handed winger, by the way, for those who aren't as familiar with Landon Slaggert, and he kind of plays a little bit of a power forward style mold. And I'm really curious to see how that's going to translate to the next level, because thus far in college, he's kind of gotten away with this size, or maybe played a little bit bigger than his size suggests. But again, that is against college kids, and going to pro against, that next tier of competition and playing against grown men, things aren't going to get any easier, obviously. So I'm really interested to see how his grit and his scrappiness is going to hang in there against the best of the best. But as far as his pros, what he does really well at, first off, he's just a hardworking and honest 200-foot player, and a type of player that I think Blackhawks fans, the organization, the coaching staff are going to really appreciate, because he doesn't cheat out there. He plays honestly. He works hard defensively. He's not a type of guy that, even if he doesn't have the puck, or even if he's not contributing offensively, he doesn't get down on himself, and he provides a good motor night in and night out. And he also does a good job on the defensive side of things too. He's a rather good forechecker, and for a guy of his size, not huge, but 6 foot, 190, probably going to be around 200 pounds in the NHL when he gets some more muscle on him, but he's a pretty good skater. So putting that together with a really good motor, good skating, good hustle, good IQ all over the ice, I think he's going to be a good 200-foot player at the NHL level, and kind of figures to be a third-line defensive type of piece. And also what I like about Slaggert is he's already willing to go to the net, do all of the little things, go to the dirty areas and mix it up. And he scores a lot of his goals from out in front of the net. And that's why I'm rather curious to see how his offense is going to translate to this next level, because he's not someone that scores a lot of pretty goals. I do think the goal scoring is going to be the best part of his offensive game, more so than playmaking. But like I said, excuse me, gonna get a drink of water real quick. Not really sniping or going bar down or anything. He scores a lot of goals by driving to the net, being in the right spots at the right time. So that's why I'm interested to see how it's going to translate to the next level. But as far as some of kind of the cons, I do think he needs to continue to get stronger on his skates and just more muscular in his upper body to play the type of game that he wants and to succeed at the NHL level. I think those are kind of the biggest things for him. I do think also the offensive ceiling is capped a little bit for Slaggert, because like I mentioned, he's not a great playmaker. His career high in terms of assists in college was 14, and had no more than 11 in his final 2 years with the Fighting Irish. And I also just don't know if he's going to be scoring a lot of goals via wrist shot or coming from the circles or whatnot. I think he's going to have a lot of his best offensive nights coming from in tight. So those are kind of the things that I'm looking for, or the areas maybe that Landon Slaggert needs to improve. Just continue to get stronger, continue to get a little bit faster. I think that will certainly help his game as well. And just getting stronger on his skates, that's going to help him in those battle areas where he wants to succeed, down below the dots, along the boards, behind the opposing team's net. That's where you want to see Landon Slaggert mix it up and have a lot of puck possession. And I also just want to see him continue to drive the net with a purpose like he did in college. But as far as his projection, I think he probably is going to be a bottom six two-way player for the Blackhawks, ideally a third line winger. Maybe he does wind up being a power play net front presence type of guy. I don't know if that's going to be on the top unit, but I do think there's potential there for him to be on the second unit. And I also think there's potential for him to play on the penalty kill as well, the way that he back checks and holds himself accountable on the defensive side of things and really wants to make an effort in those areas. And I think that just comes naturally with being a leader. He was a captain of Notre Dame during his senior season, and also just kind of going through that organization, having an older brother show him how to go about things the right way. I think that's really had an impact on Landon and the type of game and the type of mentality that he brings night in and night out. So bottom six two-way player, maybe could be a power play two net front presence. I do like him on the penalty kill potentially, but just a reliable energy guy that plays the game the right way, plays the game honestly. The coaching staff can trust him out there, but I do think he has a bit of a cap ceiling because of limited offensive abilities besides goal scoring around the net. And he's never going to be the prettiest type of player, but that's honestly okay. That's never what was going to make him effective at this level. But as far as a timeline for his NHL debut, it sounds like Slaggert has already joined the Blackhawks. He's here in Chicago now and will begin practicing with the team during their morning skate on Tuesday. He's not going to be in the lineup, it sounds like, when the Hawks take on the Ducks on Tuesday night at the UC. Luke Richardson just wants to give him some reps practicing and skating out there, meeting the guys, building some chemistry with them. And he also wants to sit down and have a little bit of video time to go over some clips and what he needs to do and the coverages that they're running here and all that good stuff. So it doesn't sound like Slaggert's going to be making his debut on Tuesday against Anaheim, but it could be a possibility come Friday night when they take on the Los Angeles Kings. And if not, then I think the latest it comes is Sunday when the Hawks take on the Sharks in a battle for Macklin Celebrini, the Slacken for Macklin sweepstakes. Two big tilts between the Hawks and the Sharks over the next 14 days. But there is the latest news on Landon Slaggert. Don't think he's going to play Tuesday, but Friday or Sunday is when he's going to be making his NHL debut. Coming up in just a moment, though, Blackhawks fans, don't go anywhere because I still have to get into our weekly Mailbag Monday fan segment. Is that FanDuel? That is FanDuel. First, I need to talk to you all about FanDuel. Go and get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's right, $150 worth of bonus bets if your $5 bet wins. And you can use these bonuses to bet on everything from your favorite players to favorite teams, quick bets, live same game parlays, exclusive props, and much, much more. All on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. And the NBA is taking over now that football season has wrapped up. So go and place a wager down on LeBron James, Luka Doncic, Ish Smith, Joel Embiid, and some of the other best players in the NBA. And if you go and sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon, you can start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, an official partner of the NBA. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you're still watching or listening at this point of the episode, thank you very much. I really do appreciate all your support. You're the reason I keep on going day in and day out. And if that was hilarious. And if you haven't done so already, make sure to go and smash that like button, comment down below, subscribe for Celebrini, subscribe to the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel, and also make sure to check out the new Locked On Sports Today, because Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts from Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. So make sure to go and check out Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Segment 3, before I wrap things up, still got to get into our weekly Mailbag Monday fan segment. And as always, if you're watching this right now and going, why didn't I get my question in? Make sure to go and drop that down below in the comment section right now. You can also DM me on any of my accounts on X. You can email lockedonblackhawks@gmail.com, or you can even find the community tab on the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel. Make sure to click that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. I really enjoy this segment. I like doing it week in and week out, but it can't be possible without all of you viewers, our listeners. So make sure to hit me up with those questions. There's plenty of places to do so, and I'll answer them this time on the show next week. But the first question I wanted to answer here today comes from Blackhawk X Hockey on X, who asked, could we see Kevin Korchinski play in the AHL a little next year? Yes, really good question. From my understanding, I believe in order for CHL drafted prospects, if you're either from the WHL, the OHL, or the QMJHL, you have to be at least 20 years old going into the season by December 31st of that season in order to play in the NHL, or in the AHL, not the NHL, in order to be eligible to play in the AHL. Kevin Korchinski, of course, is still only 19 years old. He turned 19 last summer, so that made him ineligible to play for the Rockford Ice Hogs of the AHL this season. And quite honestly, I do think Korchinski probably could have used some time down there, and if that was an option, I think the Blackhawks would have utilized it. It kind of just depends on his play. I don't think they necessarily want to be sending him down there, but if he kind of plays like Wyatt Kaiser did in the early going this season through 15 or 20 games, I wouldn't be surprised to see Kevin Korchinski down there, and I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. He still has a ways to go defensively and how to handle things without being the most physical player in his own zone. It's a learning curve, and there will be no shame in him going to Rockford. It just kind of depends on his play. If he comes out of the gate fire next year, he'll probably never play for the Rockford Ice Hogs, but he will be eligible because he'll be 20 years old this summer. By December 31st of next year, that'll make him eligible for the AHL under my understanding. So I believe he'll be eligible next season if the Blackhawks want to go that route. Next question comes from @Gray FOSVT 302 on X, who asked, do you guys think we'll see Nazar with the Hawks this season? I mentioned this on Friday. Yeah, I do. It's not set in stone like Landon Slaggert signing his ELC was, but it kind of seems like momentum's heading that way. Both Ben Pope and Scott Powers of The Athletic have kind of alluded to that. And just given how successful Nazar has been for Michigan, they've been a top team all season long. He was really good at the World Juniors to help the USA win gold. I wouldn't be surprised. Again, it's not 100%, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him sign his ELC and get in some games with the Blackhawks by the end of the season. Next question comes from, I don't even know if this was a question. I just wanted to bring it up. @Cubs_suck_ on X asks, doesn't even ask, just says, this game makes me really wish they traded guys like Tyler Johnson and Blackwell. No future with the Blackhawks once they are ready to compete. I don't know how you watched that Blackhawks game last night, and that was the conclusion you came to. The Blackhawks are doomed in their future because they didn't trade Tyler Johnson and Colin Blackwell, because they don't have enough draft picks already or don't have a deep enough prospect pool. They really could have used those extra 4th and 5th round selections. That just makes absolute no sense. Cubs suck. Don't watch Blackhawks games if that's your takeaway. Next question comes from @Bridgman07, who asked, what happens when someone is claimed off waivers? Is there any compensation or no? And this wasn't actually a question designed for Mailbag Monday, but I thought it was a good question from Ken, who follows me and interacts with me a ton on X. So I'm sure he won't mind me answering it here, because I feel like a lot of people have this question about how compensation works when someone gets claimed off waivers, because it's kind of different in every league. And in the NFL, you get compensation for that. In the NHL, you do not. So the Ottawa Senators claiming Boris Kachuk off of waivers, he's now just theirs, but his cap hit is now on their books. I believe the Blackhawks are still the ones paying him through the end of the season, but his full contract amount is now on the Ottawa Senators' books, and the Blackhawks don't receive any compensation. That's the risk of placing guys on waivers in the NHL who aren't waivers exempt. You can lose them for nothing in return at any given point in time. Next question comes from @WillyTYC on X, who asked, what key pieces do you think we are missing, and what's next year's draft looking like since we have another good pick? I think the biggest thing that's missing in the Blackhawks lineup is just speed and actual depth pieces, right? The forward group is undoubtedly what they're going to have to be targeting in free agency throughout these next handful of years. On the defensive side of things, they're kind of just waiting for these guys to develop. And I know defense isn't a strength of the Blackhawks, so it would be easy to say they need to get better at defense. But honestly, the plan is just to allow these guys to develop along with Seth Jones. Maybe they make one more veteran addition to that back end over the next few years. But really, to me, it's just getting more speed and skill in those top 9 forward lines. I think that's the biggest thing that's been missing for the Blackhawks. And obviously, Connor Bedard's been their head honcho. They need to give him some help. I think those are the biggest things the Blackhawks are missing, but those things are really only going to happen with time, unfortunately, and just waiting till these prospects ripen a little bit. As far as what next year's draft is looking like, after Macklin Celebrini, it is a bit of a toss-up, but there are still some solid high-end players. It's nothing like last year's NHL draft, though. The 2025 NHL draft is going to be a really deep one as well, supposedly. But a chance for the Blackhawks to get a really good player, even if they don't come away with Macklin Celebrini. Artem Levshunov is a right-handed defenseman, I think, has to be interesting just because I do think the Blackhawks could use a right-handed D on the back end. Caden Lindstrom is a prospect that's really intriguing to me as well, but I'm still diving into the 2024 NHL draft, and I'll be having a lot more stuff coming out on that and my rankings and mock draft and all that stuff as we start to get more towards the summer. Last question I have here comes from Grant Como 4892 on X, who asked, can we bring up Nazar this year and send him back to Michigan next year? No. Whenever a college player inks their entry-level deal, they go pro. Their clock is over in the NCAA. So if Nazar signs his entry-level deal, he'll forgo his last 2 years with Michigan. That's just kind of how it goes. It's not like prospects and juniors. It's much different when it comes to the NCAA. So it's either go pro now or wait another year for Frank Nazar. And that's what makes this decision a little bit more exciting whenever it does come here in the next couple of weeks. All right. That is going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all again for tuning into the show. Make sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube if you haven't done so already. And also subscribe. Make sure to go and subscribe to the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel. Follow Locked On Blackhawks for free whenever you may be listening to your podcasts. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can go and give me a follow on X at Jack Bushman 2. Make sure to also go and follow my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. Until tomorrow's episode, everyone, I'm going to enjoy the rest of my birthday. Have a safe rest of your day. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.